Welcome back, everybody, to a brand new episode of Extinction Level Gaming, and with your host, Calriss01, and my co-host here, David. How you doing, David?
Doing quite well, thank you. How are you?
I'm quite well. Well, I'll be honest. Last night I did drink a bit, so not my energetic self like usual, but definitely had some fun. But definitely feeling good though, because this discussion I actually been wanting to have since I pitched it to you, because I thought it'd be interesting. So I'll get into that a little bit, but first, tell me what you've been playing this week.
So this week I've been playing a little bit, not too much, actually. Like a Dragon Gaiden, the man who erased his name, been working through that. And that's pretty much it. It's been a bit of a quiet week on the gaming front. It's been a very busy week on the work front.
Yeah,
About
gotcha.
yourself?
I've been busy myself, not exactly gaming, but I've been trying to get a few hours here and there of some FIFA, because that's a game I kind of been spending a lot of time grinding out.
Nice.
Not the card packs, just so people know. I'm not shilling out for EA. No,
Yeah.
what I like to spend time in that game actually is the seasons mode where you get to just play as the regular teams. Don't get updated rosters. So even though
Yeah, they do it.
even though I will say, still not happy with some of the updates they've been doing to it, because let me just say the defense is poor. And I just put that nicely because before, defending used to be pretty easy for like newcomers, but now you have to really know what you're doing to defend well, and it sucks. Like if you're going against someone that knows what they're doing, it just feels like you're just gonna get wiped. Yeah. Anyways, besides
Yeah.
that,
I agree. I've heard that, and my experience playing it so far is much the same. It's like when you're playing against the computer, so to speak, it's like a training drill. And as soon as you step up to somebody who's got half an idea about what they're doing, yeah,
yeah, and not to mention the
you
weird AI scaling in terms of how it plays against you. Like, it can either be really dumb or it can like completely destroy you. There is no in between.
yeah, it has moments where it switches between the two in the middle of a game as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. But besides that, I've also been playing through a Jedi Survivor again because I bought it on my PC quite recently. So
Nice.
yeah, I didn't finish it on my PlayStation. I got like, I don't want to say like halfway, but kind of like that midway point to when you get to that halfway point in the story. So yeah, I've been playing through that again. Been pretty fun. But yeah,
Excellent.
yeah, yeah. Besides that, so there were some recent gaming announcements. I don't want to really cover the Summer's Game Fest because a lot of the stuff that was shown there, some of the stuff I already like. Besides, of course, the ending there with Resident Evil. It wasn't 9, right? It was something else.
Resident Evil something or other.
Yeah. I hate when these companies don't use the traditional number system.
It's one of those. I can't remember. Was it Resident Evil Resonance or Resistance or something
Yeah,
like that?
something like that.
Six following from that. Yeah.
Yeah. Besides that, a lot of the games that were announced were from the PS Plus that I cared about. So,
Yeah.
I'll just kind of go through mine that I was kind of excited for. The new Suda 51 game. I am very excited for.
Yeah.
uh, and I think if I remember correctly, his company was actually bought out by Tencent quite recently too. So
It was.
yeah, so him having some big funding shouldn't be bad at all for his games, and he's honestly like probably one of my top 5 like favorite Japanese directors, because like the way he makes his games, it's like you have to be on drugs to kind of understand it because of how humorous it can be, but like that's why they're so perfect.
Exactly. It's very abstract, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And besides that game, I was also excited about the reveal for some at least footage of the 007 game.
Yes. Yeah, that thing looked good.
Very much so. And also, And I think the big one for me was also the Marvel fighting game, which I'm honestly surprised about, considering I believe that Capcom still owns the Marvel rights too for their fighting game, the Marvel versus Capcom series.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because it's under license, and Marvel can license out the same stuff as much as they like.
Yeah,
Um,
but does that mean?
so
But I'm kind of curious if that means like Capcom versus Marvel, or if Marvel versus Capcom and this new Marvel fighting game under Sony will be competing against each other
possibly.
practically.
Well, it's taking forever to get Marvel versus Capcom built. So,
Well, they are
and it's
putting
been
out
wild.
they are putting out that they did put out that remaster bundle with all the older games, or no, that hasn't released yet, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Can't remember.
Oh well, there's that, and they're still heavily supporting Street Fighter.
Yeah, yeah.
So um, it'll be interesting to see if they are getting Marvel versus Capcom, if it's still in the main production, or if they've put it on the back burner a little bit whilst they've got, because like look at Capcom's showing across this last week. Got
They
like
are, yeah, they are
half a dozen
rolling on all
major games.
cylinders at this point. Their output.
Yeah.
Great to see too, considering like where they were during like during like coming out of the PS3 generation.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah.
Absolutely.
I am kind of curious to see where this fighting game goes, because it seems like they're trying to capitalize off like the success that was Marvel Rivals.
Yeah. Oh, it's been in development for a few years.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so that oh, was it a 21, 22?
Yeah.
Might have been 2021. There was that when all the consolidation stuff was going on, and there was this conversations or confirmations that a team from Sony had done a run through all the major fighting game studios when they bought Evo, around the same time that Sony bought Evo. And Arc System Works was one of the main ones that popped up as potential takeover target. And yeah, this was what they announced this week was what ended up happening. So, and it was good that they actually went and said, "This is how this came about." Phone call from PlayStation. We want you to do this. We want it. We've got Marvel IP. Make a fighting game for us, which suggests that Sony already had the licensing for it with Marvel. They just needed someone to build it.
Yeah.
So
I mean, considering that they already have a good relationship, it seems, with publishing the Spider-Man games and also the Wolverine game that's supposed to come out next year.
yeah,
Yeah. So
no, it's they've got they've got history of doing solid work, and then PlayStation leaning through XDev on a partnership with someone who knows what they're doing. Um, and it looks like they've done a really good job. Actually, the thing about that behind the curtain look that I liked the most was when they said they showed the first art sketches and the art designs and all that sort of stuff for the character designs to Marvel. And he's saying, oh, they didn't seem happy, they didn't seem quite right, and then Marvel came back and said, yeah, that's good, but show us what your version of these characters look like. And then they've come up with this, which is, I think, is a pretty big thing for Marvel to say, hey, have the characters just put your own twist on it and show us what you got.
I think they stopped kind of caring about like how like the characters look when other like artists get a hold of it. Because like back in like when they used to publish like Marvel titles, like they would have to be like matching like the comics almost, or like whatever like series or shows were out there at the time.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's great to see them being more lenient this time around. But like there were like a few occasions where like some of them didn't have to like match, but like yeah, this is great to see. I think I definitely love the art style, and I think like Arc System Works, like they're on a hot streak with their fighting games. The recent Dragon Ball
Absolutely.
games. Yeah,
Absolutely. They are absolutely smashing it.
yeah. Other than that, yeah, that was just a few games I enjoyed. Also, I just want to say real quick, after the Summer Games Fest, I did a whole show I watched it because of a friend that was streaming it, and it was so boring. Like I was just like,
Oh,
I was just like, there was no point in IOI even doing this. They didn't need to.
yep.
Basically, all it was just an announcement for the new multiplayer mode for their Hitman game. But I
Yeah.
don't think that needed to be announced there. I don't think they needed a whole stage for that.
No. Oh, yeah. It's one of those. I don't know why they seem to be getting more and more forced excitement for those things,
Yeah.
and it seems to just get duller and duller every time.
It used to.
I don't
I
know.
will say it was a whole lot worse. Like back when these companies were still trying to figure out what to do post E3, like practically like losing all of its venues. Like when Square Enix had their own show, Capcom had their own show. It was like
Yeah.
yeah. But
Well,
anyway,
that's the other thing too. Is now it's these shows as the replacement of E3. But when E3 was at its peak, the only way that you could get news from gaming companies was at these shows or through the magazines or the print media. We
right.
didn't have YouTube, we didn't have social media, we didn't have all this stuff. And I actually redirect a few people frequently. They say, "Oh, it's dry for gaming news. There's nothing being announced." So they go and have a look at PlayStation's YouTube channel. Go and have a look at Capcom's YouTube
You see,
channel.
I don't
Go
think
and
that's
check
I
out
don't think that
Xbox's YouTube. Oh,
you see,
it's nuts how much.
I don't think that's what people mean when they say it's dry. I think they mean like no exciting news, like
Mm,
like those big headlining
but
stories.
that also ties into it. It just dropped announcements 60, 90-second
Yeah,
YouTube video, and that, or they'll put something on a blog post, or they'll put out a post on social media, and that's it. The publisher has complete control of the narrative then, and it's not costing them anything in terms of dollars wise to just go bang, here's a trailer, bang, here's the announcement, here it is over there. They're not having to put up big dollars to be at these shows. They're not having to put these big shows on. It's really, I don't know, they might do one, maybe two a year, of their own sort of stream shows. Typically, it's Capcom, and for example, does theirs around the Game Awards or that time, towards the back end of the year. But
right.
like with the state of play, um, they're pretty much all, might as well say all third party except for two games, and that's probably it that we'll hear of most of these things until they launch. It is just the way the things are at the moment, but because of the ease of access of information, it takes all the excitement out of it, from
Yeah,
my perspective. So, um, having those big reveals for game titles that, I don't think we're ever going to get another God of War reveal like the one they did for 2018. I don't think we're ever going to get another one of those. There's never going to be that level of theatrics and excitement for a game announcement ever again. Just simply because the medium's not there for it anymore. But that's just me as a grumpy old man. In my perspective, they might prove me wrong. Who knows what the future holds?
yeah. But anyways, so let's get into the topic I had. So unfortunately, I was still not able to find the video that where I got this idea from. But if I'm trying to go based off of memory, so I don't remember if it was specifically aimed at like like the film industry or if it was aimed at like just like companies in general and like declining products like Apple or whatever. But the argument basically was it was using this premise that I showed you of shitification, which I showed you the definition of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, if you actually look up the definition itself, it kind of brings you another little bit of information of where it ties into I guess like cutting corners with trying to trace trends. So basically, like any company on the stock market that puts out a product. So for my example, which I immediately tied into, was EA with their sports games, where they don't really do anything to improve on the next iteration. They just kind of cut features or like just like put out the same thing over and over, right?
Yeah.
So
It's a sorry, keep going.
I don't know. So basically, what I want to do with this discussion is just kind of apply this to a lot of the gaming industry because uh, I kind of believe that a lot of companies now are kind of starting to become more afraid of putting out like different games, like trying to be more experimental with them nowadays compared to like PS3 generation or heck, even some of the PS4 generation. I mean, you do still get that from indies, but not the big publishers these days.
Yeah. It's it's a really strange one. So the amount of corner cutting that goes on for the larger stuff with this whole notion of we're trying to save costs or we're trying to achieve this, we're trying to achieve that. And we're trying to replicate lightning in a bottle that somebody else managed to strike without fully understanding how or why it's done that. The big companies just, it seems to be the status quo for them. And then, as you rightly pointed out, with the indie guys, they can do whatever they like because they're wearing all the risks, so they're prepared to take it. And they just come up with the most unique circumstances or unique mechanics or quirky little storylines, or some of the games they come up with are just left of center. And they've got the time and the effort and the energy to put in to develop what they want to develop, and it feels less like that they're cutting corners and more that they're just simply not focusing on stuff that's not important. I was reflecting on this the last couple of days since you put it out there that we were going to chat about it, and one of the things that really stands out for me is when the big AAA guys cut a corner, or they cut stuff, shortcut on stuff, and then try and flesh the games out with bloat filler.
Yeah.
These stupid little side missions or these fetch quests that add absolutely nothing to the game other than here's something else for you to do if you want to do it. But because the mechanics are so frustrating, or because the game is so bare bones in the story, or because of a multitude of different things, it irritates me because they could have just gone and spent, instead of putting this, 20 hours worth of bloat into a game, you could have gone and spent that time just making the game better without it. And it's, I don't know, I suppose it's the whole idea of this is that it can for me, I suppose it presents in different ways, but it can also be one compounding on the other, and it just makes it so much worse.
You know
Makes it
what's
so much worse.
So you know what's funny? That after the day I pitched you the topic idea, so my favorite channel that I always like to share you when it comes to some news, Bellular, he put out a video, quite recently, or they did because it's a team channel, but they put out a recent video covering the EA story where they had shut down the developers behind the Black Panther game. I don't know if you
Yeah,
read too much about
yeah, I
that.
saw that.
Yeah, yeah. So what was interesting is the team. I didn't realize this until I watched the video, but I guess the team was actually built up of former like executives and like developers from Monolith, the exact team that was actually from when he reported it sounded like a lot of the people that moved out of the studio after the development that was Shadow of War, I guess moved to that new studio. And
Yeah,
so basically, I guess the game was being set the studio was being set up to kind of like build like new tech and I guess like implement like their own like Nemesis system, but legally they can't call it that because Warner Brothers trademarked it. But
yeah,
yeah, but I guess the reasoning that EA gave was to save costs because of course they don't want to take any risks on single player games since they're more dependent on multiplayer games.
That's right.
So I kind of find that interesting because like it kind of applies to like the to to this topic to shitification. They're
Hmm.
basic. So basically, I see it as like it, they're afraid to invest in something that has quality. If they because if it doesn't succeed, it could be bad for them. But they're just trying to play it safe. And lately, even the safe tactics haven't been working for some of these companies. I mean, EA is unhappy with Apex revenue, or and the FIFA revenue has also been declined. So yeah, I kind of see this as like an interesting like point, like that a lot of these companies like even if like they try to be safe, it's not always going to work out.
Yeah, and that's this sterilization of the games, really, isn't it? They
Yeah,
go play it safe. We don't want to take the risk over here and have the thing fall apart, and all of a sudden, these games feel very.
samey.
Oh, they're not even cookie cutter type games anymore, where they're just one's trying to replicate another, and it's effectively a drag and drop or a copy and paste or whatever you want to call it. It's just so. Go this direction, push this button, this action happens, go over here, button mash this, and you're doing it. Like, even the stories are starting to get sterilized because they don't want to offend anyone, or they don't want to exclude anyone, or it's just getting to a point of there's no imagination really left in it. It's just copy what they did and hope that we strike it as well. Um, and for the volumes of money that they're pouring into it, at some point, they've got to de-risk it to a certain degree, but like, it's just the they more time and effort they pour into these things without actually presenting us with something new or different or exciting or imaginative or revolutionary or whatever you want to call it. And EA is a great example. They had a wonderful opportunity when they did that Dragon Age Veilguard
Yeah,
to do something that built on the previous one, because they had a very dedicated base of supporters for that game that wanted another one. They had the opportunity with the current technology to bring out something that looked great, played great, mechanics and systems could have been absolutely spot on. They didn't have to rebuild and remake everything. Just grab the previous games ones and just tune them right up to 11 and give one or two new things into it.
yeah,
Additional weapons, processes, or whatever you want to call it. And all they had to do was write a really good story. And it seems like they took liberties with the story that were in the wrong direction, and they carved out a heap of what made the storyline great in the previous game, in Dragon Age Insurrection. They didn't bother updating um, the fighting mechanics and the gameplay mechanics. They tried to rebuild brand new ones, and then carved out all the quirks that made it fun in Insurrection. And then they sterilized the thing to the nth degree to try and take out any chance of offending anyone. And the end result was it pissed everyone off. um, and it's just like, we cut it here, cut there, cut corners here, just tune that up there. It just, and they're all doing it. They're all doing it, and it
and
drives.
it, it's also not just that they're like taking these compromises with just being it safe and like old games too, but they're also just heavily relying on like remakes and remasters too. So like why make a new game when it's cheaper to put out like a game that people already loved before, but just give it some prettier graphics or update the resolution, which
It's yeah.
it's kind of
I
funny too when because like when I originally saw the video beforehand I always felt like gaming and film always kind of copied from each other. Well, at least gaming
yeah.
tends to follow the same direction that like the film industry does, where like you know the film companies right now are kind of like not really like making like anything different. They all feel formulaic. And so
Oh yeah.
yeah,
It's yeah. And it used to be that. I don't know, it was even until recently. Someone had, the movie rights or a script or something would be optioned, and then all of a sudden you'd get one studio does this version, another studio does that version of. The most recent example I can think of is uh, what is it? It's White House Down has got Channing Tatum and Jamie Foxx in it, and then they
I
had
remember
another
that
version
movie.
which had another version which was same but
Yes.
different, which had Gerard Butler and
The same
Morgan Freeman
concept,
in it.
same concept, just different actors.
Same concepts, almost exactly the scripting, the plot writer, everything's almost exactly the same. It's just how getting there.
Yeah.
And I've had this discussion in the past, and people go, "Well, no, they're completely different." I said, "It's like saying the Last of Us game and the Last of Us TV show are exactly the same. They're getting to the same destination through the same plot points, but they're just slightly different in how you progress from plot point to plot point."
Yeah.
And it's nothing wrong with that. It's telling the same story in slightly in two different ways. But always going to be better than the other. But it comes down to your personal tastes and preferences as to which one you prefer.
Yeah.
And it's the same with a lot of movies. It's the same with a lot of books. It's the same with a lot of the entertainment medium. But when it comes to games, we are very finicky and fussy people when we consume these things. And that's not a bad thing. And rightly so. We're entitled to be fussy about this. You can go and watch a movie for $20. You go and play a game, it's going to cost you, it could be 20, it could be 80. Um, but justifying a price point by cutting cutting corners and not putting the effort in is a pain. Is just not there. I
Yeah.
was just going to circle back on the you said about remasters and remakes. I I grew up playing Crash Bandicoot. This is an example. Um, Crash Bandicoot, played the first, second, and third karting game. Naughty Dog was looking after it. I loved it. Brilliant. Then they did the release of the first three games. I say recently, in the last few years, they brought it up to PS5 and Xbox Series, and all the rest of it, and it felt completely different. It was chalk and cheese. It was the same game, just felt completely different to play it. Lo and behold, go to find out when they did the remake of it and brought it right up to modern day standards, as I say, the modern day technology. They changed the jump mechanic, they changed the spin mechanic, and they changed the platform. I say the platform. They changed the launch pads and the land pads, the size of those. So because they said, "Oh, we're trying to make it easier," and in doing that, I completely lost muscle memory of how to play that game. And it felt like something completely different to what I remember it being. Now, for those who've picked it up for the first time and playing it, they won't know any different. But for those of us, and I had this conversation with a lot of people who played those games, those of us who grew up playing it, it's a completely different game. And in the excuse that they used was, "Oh, we're just trying to make it easier." Well, completely change the mechanics on something so that more people could access this and it not be, the difficulty spikes that happened in those original games when they couldn't do the updates via, day one patch updates, or we've added this up post game and all the rest of it. It was what it was, and you either played it or you didn't play it because that's what the game was. But to go and change something like that, under the pretense of making it easier, just completely changed it from my perspective, and it made the game a lot worse because it took away that thing that made it a really, really, legendary game. Was there are levels in in Crash Bandicoot which will make you tear your hair out because of how you've got to get the timing so right.
Right.
And now it's just bleh. And it all because when they were doing the updates, they were implementing a cut and paste piece of coding that they'd made for the Crash Bandicoot wheel and tire Shift in Time or whatever it was called. So they took the engine for that and just brought the coding in across from that because they didn't want to bother compiling and updating the original stuff. And it ruined a good game. Absolutely ruined a good game from my perspective. But again, they, I don't know why they do this stuff with the remasters and remakes as well. Is that they bring them up so they're updating
Well, it's
them
because
and they're
it's because
going.
it's easy and cheap to do. I
Yeah,
mean, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I like remakes and remasters because like if you haven't played it before, it gives you a new chance to play it again. But like at the same time, it's always going to be a safe bet for them because it if it's a game people love, they'll buy it still. And the people who haven't played
yeah,
it yet also have an opportunity to buy it. But like it's still going to be a way of them like, all right, we don't have to invest as much money into this, so put some money here for that, and hopefully we can make a profit out of that. Whereas when it comes to making newer games, it's a lot more risky, and that's where I kind of want to come back to indie and double A studios because the video I also saw kind of made an example of Joseph's studio, the people that made the It Takes Two, and of course I forgot what it's called. Split Fiction, right? Yeah.
yep,
Yeah. And if you look at like the type of games he's doing, they are taking risks like doing like this with like the co-op genre because like pretty much every other studio gave up on doing co-op stuff. The only I think franchise that like was known for it still was Halo, and even then 343 dropped it with the Halo Infinite. So
mm,
yeah, and the thing that and I think Joseph is being like really revolutionary with some of the tech that they're doing and with how good these games look. I mean, like I think you remember how co-op games that used to look like when you play like with other people. How it like games would always have to sacrifice resolution or anything, but like these games still look beautiful that he's making,
yeah,
and yeah, and the fact that you're able to do these online without like needing someone there with you in person is a big bonus too. But
yeah,
yeah, but I really do think that like the indie scene and these double A studios that these publishers are partnering with have taken that creativity and are the only ones that are just like pushing that to the forefront. Whereas opposed to like your Naughty Dogs, your rock stars, your whoever, right? Your bigger AAA studios have been like severely like cut in terms of creativity in order to like push these companies' profits because like they're not gonna want to take risks for their stocks. They're not because they know if they take a hit like on a sell that on a game that doesn't sell well, it's not gonna go well for their stock. So why bother?
yeah,
But they can still at least put in some money into these smaller studios that they don't own, and the risks won't all be on them at the very least.
yeah. Th- I don't like the way that they take this de-shitification at the same time as de-risking. You can
Yeah,
de-risk without causing, without cutting all this corner cutting and stuff. But yeah, I I really do feel and see that the indie studios have got the best opportunities that they have ever had to make games that will produce magic moments for people, and these indie studios are going to be able to make good on, they're not going to make one game and then it doesn't sell well, so they're not going to get another opportunity. They
yeah,
don't have to rely on the publishers as much as they have in the past, mainly because the tools are there for them to build these games quickly and cheaply, and or cost effectively is probably a better way of saying it. And they can, as I said before, just focus on the things they want to focus on to make what they want to make. If you're gonna take the shortcuts on assets or vision or graphics or whatever it is, you just build it in for example, build a game in Unreal Engine 5 and just drag and drop from their library. Don't have a team of 30 or 40 people redoing mocap because you don't quite like the way that the hide
Yeah,
behind the
that is
box
that is
animation
some
comes through, you know?
that is something I've kind of heard the argument for. Like a lot of these companies kind of hire positions that like aren't really necessary. Like, why do you need an advisory role for like so and so position when like all you
Yeah.
just need is that one person to get it done?
Well, that's you know, pick on PlayStation for this example. They had an entire team being run out of visual arts, the visual
Yeah, yeah,
arts area. An entire team. All their job was for years was to build up a library through mocap of different animations, running from cover to cover points for shooter games, coming up behind a tree or coming up behind a down object for stealth running, jumping here, moving there, flipping here, fight scene animations, you know, all this sort of stuff. They had a team of 100+ people for years doing this. Mocap work, that stuff is extremely expensive.
yeah.
And that's all they did. And they built an entire library, and then Naughty Dog went and did their games, and they did all the mocap. And Insomniac did their stuff with Spider-Man, and they did mocap. And other Days Gone did mocap. And all these other the studios that could have just gone and used this library that had been built, all of a sudden are doing their own mocap work because they didn't like exactly what was going and couldn't find something that exactly fit from this other studio. And so what happens? PlayStation goes, this is stupid. If the studios are just going to do their own stuff, why do we need visual arts? So that's why they shut down visual arts.
Yeah.
There's no need for it. And like, talk about wastage and silliness. Now they've got this massive library of stuff that they don't use. It's great to have a library full of stuff, but you got to make money out of it somehow. So what do they do with it? Well, they sell it to anybody who wants it, or they push it into UE5 and Unity or whoever, or they out through XDev to their partners to use. But if you're going to take the shortcut on something, take the shortcut on something that's already been done that's of decent quality. But take the shortcut on the storytelling, or take the shortcut on the game mechanics and stuff like that. Spend the time and effort in that stuff. And that's where the indie guys are absolutely smashing it. They're not worried about that sort of quirky animation, that janky little piece of animation or whatever. So just drag it out of the drag and drop from the library that's available for that piece of stuff, whatever you need to do, and that's your shortcut.
All right.
And just go from there. Give me a game mechanic that looks really cool. But anyway, I'll get off my soapbox about that.
No, you're not. I mean, you're not wrong. That's definitely because, like, when you look at how inflated these, like, a lot of the budgets are for these big games, like, even if they don't even look that like they're doing anything too special to stand out from like other games of the same genre, a lot of the bloat comes from like paying so many people to work on these games. It's like you don't need that many, especially.
Exactly.
Especially when some are like, especially like how you mentioned, like they had a whole studio set up for mocap work, which, like, that's just redundancy. That's just redundancies right there. It's like, why bother?
Exactly. Their only job having the only thing they were doing was building a library of motions
Yeah.
to
So
try and
it's,
make the game development faster, and then the studios didn't use them. It's like, well,
yeah.
what was the point?
I think
Anyway,
another good example of like overpaying like for something that's not like necessary is like I think Bungie's like also a good case in terms of like the executives getting paid a lot more, like even though like the product hasn't been great as of recently.
no. Well, yeah,
Cause
with you.
I think you remember the whole controversy with Bungie's CEO with the whole car shenanigans, where he was like showing off all his
Yeah,
expensive cars while people were getting laid off. Yeah, it's like
exactly.
why do you gotta pay these people so much? You could just be paying like the employees that some of that money.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I suppose it's a conversation, but it's an entirely different conversation to get into.
It does contribute to like some of the struggles that these studios do face.
Well, it does, but at the same time, when it comes down. Or part of
Like
it has
imagine if,
got to do with.
imagine if some of that money could go to extending like how much development time is actually required to, you know, pay for people who
Well,
actually know what they're doing and try to get this stuff
yeah.
probably done,
Well,
or
this
like,
this is this is the say the philosophical argument about some of these studios which are privately owned. They're privately owned, so the money's coming from those who've put the skin in the game.
yeah,
If you own the studio and it's coming out of your back pocket effectively to fund the additional work, then it's your decision to make, isn't it? Whether how much more risk you want to fund into the basically put into the games, whether you think you're going to get it back or not. Yeah, as I said, it's an entirely different conversation to have around the studio struggling and the boss is driving around in a brand new Mercedes or a new Bentley or something. But if you've got two or three studio heads that are, owners of, so CD Projekt Red is what it was when they did The Witcher 3 is a good example. Now they've got other funding arrangements, but those three that own that studio started from scratch, got some seed funding, built those games. Witcher 3 blew up, and they made crap loads of money. Do they have to then pour that money back in to do Cyberpunk, or do they find different funding arrangements? It's effectively the money in their own pocket. They can decide what they want to do with it. But if the argument is that the studio heads who own the studios have to pour the money back into doing the next game, then I would say that that's not a feasible option to be looking at. But it comes back to this whole conversation that we're having. If they're purposefully making a shitter product because they want to keep the money in their own pocket, they need to get off their lazy asses and find somebody else to do the funding shortfall. Because if they're gonna just ride the coattails of previous success to think that they're just gonna run off into the sunset with another big bag full of cash,
yeah, and then that kind of leads
then
into just like them trying to just milk a franchise too,
yeah.
because like once it has
Oh
success,
look,
people are gonna go to the next game, but
yeah,
that typically depends on like how much people are willing to give like those games a chance. If like even if like they release like it's the previous game was popular, the next game can be broken. It could be really terrible, as we've seen in this games industry.
yeah. Well, and that comes back to the entire point of what we've been discussing for the last little while is, are they doing it on purpose because they want a quick turnaround, or are they doing it because they're sterilizing the shit out of the thing to take all the risk out of it? And as soon as you shift into that second part, you go from indie or small double A who's prepared to put some effort in and do some quirky stuff into, oh, we now need to de-risk this thing to make sure that we can sell a crap load of it. It's straight away you're into that zone, and there's a risk that a lot of these are going to change.
Honestly, I when I look at the indie scene, I think of like studios like Joseph's. I always forget the name of the studio. Fairlight Games, Har-
Haze Light.
Hazelight. Okay, yeah, Hazelight. And then I think of the Cuphead studio. I mean, there's a lot of studios that in the indie scene that are doing stuff that like change, like that look groundbreaking. I mean, even if they aren't technically groundbreaking, like it's something different. Like Cuphead practically was like a godsend in terms of art style, doing like the old Mickey Mouse cartoon animations for a video
Yeah.
game. So it's like, why can't we get that risk? Why can't we get that risk in like AAA anymore? Like, I think it would be so much better if we could.
It would. I know why we won't, but it would be good if they tried. They just will not invest money in something
I mean,
that.
I will say, because like this was a thing that was lingering in the back of my mind too as an argument, like for these companies. Like, I kind of was thinking of like Dreams and how that kind of flopped, and that was me. And Media Molecule is like probably one of the best like studio that's willing to innovate that Sony has and put funding into. But after Dreams failed, I don't think they're going to want to take that kind of risk anymore with Media Molecule.
They can't afford to. This is the thing. It comes back to that. If you're a studio inside one of these major platformers or major public publishers, the first thing you've got to do is pay for the bosses, pay for the overheads, pay for the governance, pay for the corporate structures. That stuff is not cheap. That's probably the most expensive part of those studios having to fund it. And as soon as you start looking at that as a starting point and thinking that that's not like a couple of million, that's tens of millions of dollars every year to exist within these structures, that's sapping all the creativity out straight away. And it's just got to be something that they know will sell. So that's when they go to the market metrics and go, well, what sells well, what doesn't sell well, what's the market interested now? And that's when they don't necessarily chase the trends as much as they chase the trends whilst being, trying to replicate what works for others. But when you've got a finite number of customers, you've got to make sure that you're servicing their needs or their wants, and you need to do it at a volume or at a pricing point which allows you as a studio to remain in existence. And if you can't do it, then you won't exist. That's the reality of these studios existing within these large multinational conglomerates. And that's one of the reasons why I really detest this whole someone's got to go and buy this studio. And I have people that talk to me about this all the time. They go, Sony should buy this one. Microsoft should buy that one. They should buy this one. They should buy that one. They need to go and buy this one. So why do they need to buy them? Oh, they need the IP. They don't need the IP. They don't need to own the IP.
You see,
They can get the IP through a publishing deal.
you
Why do
see
they
that
need to buy the studio?
in some arguments I could understand it. Like I think the best one for me would be Housemarque, because before Sony had bought them, they were kind of struggling financially after all their a little smaller arcadey shooter games weren't selling as well. And so when they tried to pivot to the battle royale genre, you kind of knew the writing was on the wall that they were going to have to either shut down or like move to a bigger project. So in cases like that, I do think like it's good for a studio to sell, but like in cases like Insomniac, like I think like studios like those can still like run perfectly fine independently and not have to worry. Like
Yes, but they need to be very careful about what they're doing
yeah,
because remember,
and I think that
Insomniac
well,
did
I mean,
one
look
game
at
away from.
I mean, look at beforehand. Before they were picked up by Sony, they were doing just fine, like publishing for or making games for other publishers. They were doing
Uh, they made, what was it? Sunset Overdrive for Xbox.
Fractured for
That
EA.
yeah, Sunset Drive nearly bankrupted them. How poorly that performed. That's how Sony got them so cheap. The only thing that was keeping them alive was the Ratchet and Clank deal. So it was yeah, it's. I hear what you're saying. It that some studios do have the ability to perform well
Yeah,
on
like
their own,
actually,
and there's plenty
I
of
think Larian
opportunities to do that
I think
stuff.
Larian is a better example right now. You know, considering they put out a
Larian's a
big hit.
great example,
Yeah, yeah,
but Larian's a great example. Try to replicate that at your own peril would be my only suggestion on that. However, they have had access to source material with a massive fan base, and they've done a great job as say, an indie studio. The risk there is the next game they crank out, if it doesn't do well, they're dead.
yeah,
Because they don't have that protection. But if they try to replicate what they've done with a completely different story, or they just build everything themselves from the start, they are in that zone of that sterilization and shitification risk. A lot of stuff that was in Baldur's Gate 3 was an improved carryover from Divinity Original 2.
yeah,
And yes, it was improved, and yes, they put time and effort in it, but they put it into the mechanics and the gameplay and the systems. They didn't worry about spit and polish on the graphics and all the animations and all that sort of stuff. And it's not like they're using a third person over the shoulder photorealistic art style anyway. But if they take that step, whatever they're doing next is going to be pretty decent. But they said they weren't doing anything in the Dungeons and Dragons area. Whatever they're going to do next, if they don't maintain what they've got, and they try to do something completely different, like what Cyberpunk 2077 was for CDPR, fair enough, they've got the chops and they've earned the right to do that, but if they don't stick the landing, they could be dead quite quickly.
You know what kind of popped into my mind as soon as you said that, that gave that example? When because I watched the documentary that No Clip did on Guerrilla Games, like when they were describing the whole process from shifting from Killzone to making Horizon, which they had never done an open world game. So they were like in the middle of the documentary, you could hear them, you could just like hear them talk saying like how like they were absolutely scared like of like if this would land or not.
Yeah. And every project, every game studio, and every developer, even from the single person indie out all the way up to the the 2,500 plus hands on for these major games. There's no guarantee that they're going to land. There's no
Yeah.
guarantee that they're going to sell well. But the big corporations, as you know, we've been saying, they sterilize them and they shitification on them and all the rest of it to get them to a point and de-risk them to a point where they will at least sell and sell to some degree. Because there's no guarantee. The next Spider-Man game, who knows? It's got great legacy, but there's no guarantee it's going to sell.
Yeah,
No
considering
one
how
knows what the
split,
market will be like.
especially considering how split the responses were for two.
Yeah.
It-
Um, and you know, you got the timing of it. Does it launch? You know, it's just as simple as the timing. Look, they're both the Horizon games, Zero Dawn and Forbidden West. Both of them released in the same week as a different game on a different platform, and they got hammered. Both times they got hammered on their sales. They're not bad games. They're quite good games. But launching them up against Zero Dawn went up against Breath of the Wild. It's nuts. When you consider how well it's performed in its launch window when it was up against that thing, like it's just timing can be the be all and end all of a game as well of when it launches. So I mean, again, there's arguments there around, do you launch it here, do you launch it there, how do you time it up and all the rest of it. But yeah, you put something out there in the market, it might go well, it might not go at all. And again, Concord, great example.
oh yeah.
You look at all the
It
indication metrics for its
I
development and all the rest of it. It
funny
was
you mentioned
gonna
'cause
hit
I was kind of
well.
thinking about that myself with that whole situation that happened there. I was kind of like when I was remembering back to it today, actually, I was kind of thinking like I wonder if that's kind of gonna be like the new strategy instead of like if they see it's too risky to release, they is it better just to cancel instead of release a game like it used to be?
Oh, well, that's an interesting question. They PlayStation hasn't really changed their even with their live service stuff. They didn't change their QA. They're knocking games on the head, left, right, and center. It it You look at the metrics that came through for Concord. Every time it did a play test, it was fine. Every time it went past the quality check, it was fine. It was chugging along, hitting the marks every way, and then they released it, and the thing did nothing.
Right.
And if it was a game where you just paid for it and that's all it was, and it didn't require matchmaking and online servers and all that sort of stuff, they would have left it there. But when you got less than 1,000 people playing it and you're paying millions of dollars a month to run the server farms, you can't afford to do that. And that's why a lot of these live service, matchmaking required games are getting turned down. XDefiant getting shut down and all the rest of it. They're just not getting the volume through there, and to run it full of bots or AI fill-ins is just not feasible. But like again, Concord, at no point did it give any indication that it was going to fail as bad as it did.
I think I kind of disagree from my point of view as a gamer. Like I was like, looking at the reception of like other people like giving their responses and the whole reception already by the point like that was even announced was that like we're tired of these hero shooter games. So it's like if you're not going to be different, don't release it. I think the only
Well,
reason Marvel Rivals was so successful was because it was using the Marvel brand and that fact that like the combat was different for because like they're using the abilities of the heroes instead of like using guns, weapons, like your Overwatches or your Valorants. So
Yeah. Oh, and that's a fair point. But if you said market reaction prior to something launches is what they should base it off, they'd never make another game. Everyone's tired of these narrative-driven third-person games. Great, what's Sony going to release? They do something different. Everyone screams at them. We want narrative-driven third-person games. You're never going to keep the fan base happy.
I
But
guess this is kind of where I want to pitch my question to you, just to kind of wrap things up here. Is like, what would you since like you're a financial expert, right? Well, how would you handle this if you were like in a position? Would you want to at least like give these studios quality, or would you like play it safe just to keep your company afloat? Like if you were put into one of these positions.
I would, well, if it was me advising, I would say if you've got if you're a game, you've got an idea for a game, and you don't need 500 people to build it. Take your idea, start working on it, get a few people together around you that know what they're doing, or you can get them on board. Go and have a chat to someone for some seed money to get started on it. And once you've got it up to like a playable concept, go and talk to XDev, or go and talk to Xbox Indie, or go and talk to one of the platforms, not a publisher, but a platform who've got that process or the ability for you to get access to funding in some way. And they'll let you know whether they're prepared to put money into it or not. But what they'll also give you is feedback on how you could go about getting the thing done, getting it built and getting it to market. Steam's another great place where you could do that as well, Steam partner programs.
Right.
Do it as a partnering program or do it as something like that, because that gives you a pathway to a storefront. And it gives you the inside track on how, when I get it on this storefront, do I get it visible. Like I said at Summer Games Fest, over 18,000 games were released on Steam last year. In the last 12 months. Sorry. 18,000 games, you're making one and you've got to stand out. If you don't have a big marketing push, you've got to be able to land it somewhere where it's visible. That's the challenge. So working with a publisher, you could quite easily get buried in, if you took it to, I don't know, as an example, EA Originals or whatever you want. Take it to them and you'll be competing against 30 other games in their EA Originals program. You're up on whatever time frame they want to publish the game up on. There's no guarantee you're going to get any exposure anywhere. You'd be better off to just go straight to a platform.
Or maybe go to like a smaller publisher like Focus Home, or maybe
Yeah, Focus Home
or
or
Devolver
505
Digital.
or even Evolver or someone like that would be a good shout. Is a good shout of where to go as well, because they've got that inside track. Evolver's a really good one actually. The what you want to do though is you want to make sure that your vision of what you want it to be is flexible enough to get the result you want without compromising the main parts of your game. If you've got to compromise on your art style because you want to keep a game system or a mechanic there, so be it. But you shouldn't have to compromise on your storytelling if it's just, this game is telling a story. You shouldn't have to compromise on your storytelling or a system. Or, you've got to carve out all this unique system stuff because publisher says you've got to do it. There's plenty of ways that you can get what you want into a game and then get it out to market. But then it comes down to, are you prepared to make a game and maybe sell 10,000 copies and you've invested your time and money and effort into it? Or do you want to make a game and try and sell millions of copies? And if that's the case, my suggestion is go and get a job at a studio. Don't try and do it from scratch. Let somebody else take the financial risk for your idea. And ultimately, that's what it comes down to. That's what I was saying before about if you own the studio, you've got to put the money in for the risk. It's up to you how much risk you want to take. And that's the challenge. If you don't feel comfortable in reaching into your own back pocket to pull the money out to accept the risk that you're never going to see this money again, go and get a job at some other big studio and do it from there. They're always looking for creative directors. They're always looking for creative producers. They're always looking for ideas. It's
Heck,
just
even
a
some of
matter
the
of whether you want to.
even some of these big creators are starting to like leave and form their own studios.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and they do, but they're doing it with backing from other places. Like the guy that left RGG, the Yakuza creator, went out on his
Yeah,
own.
yeah.
Um, got funding from NetEase. Pulled it together. I think he got past the first post, first check mark. Got to the second one, it was no good, and they just shut it all down. So, he's back to the drawing board to try again. NetEase is the one that's put the money into it, not him. So he can just keep trying as much as he likes. It's the same, like we say, with Suda 51. It was NetEase, not Tencent, that bought
Oh,
out
okay.
Grasshopper Mechanics or whatever it's called. Yeah, he's a risk. He's a big risk that his game is either going to land or not land. But it's going to get attention because of who he is,
Yeah,
which means it's more than likely going to sell, but it's not going to sell millions, right?
yeah,
But it's a small group working very lean to produce something that's the quirkiness of that game. Just
I think that's I think
it looks
you know what I think
weird. It looks odd.
I think I kind of will use that to kind of wrap things up with my
Mm,
point. Is like I think that definitely that the Japanese publishers have kind of figured out how to like invest in like these quirky games and still be still take risks, but at the same time
yeah,
they are also doing the safe bets too with making your remasters and remakes still. But
yeah, that's it.
I think the Japanese publishers have found like a good formula, and I think that's where like a lot of these other companies that are risk adverse now at this point, like your
Yeah,
EAs, your Activisions, Microsoft, Sony, whoever. I feel like that like they need to copy more from like your Capcoms now, Capcoms or
exactly.
whoever.
Exactly. And that's why the partnerships work so great. They de-risk it for the big corporations, and it leaves the smaller studios without that massive overhead to have to worry about. So there's a win-win. But yeah, um,
Heck, I mean, if you look
those
at it,
programs.
it's kind of similar to what the film industry is doing. I mean, now you don't just get like movies made by just like one big studio. Now it's been done by like several smaller like film divisions or companies, whatever. I mean,
Yeah, they're all putting in their piece, and they're
yeah,
all sharing the risk,
and
so
now
it
you
becomes less risky for everyone.
you're kind of seeing that with gaming. I mean, like look at like the development between the relationship of uh, Bandai Namco and Sony. Bandai Namco is like footing the bill to fund some of these games like that new Everybody's Golf. So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. And the tie this all back to the topic. Benefit out of that is it's it's reducing the amount of shitification that's happening because they're allowing these smaller studios to take that extra risk on board because they've diluted it or shared it out so much. They don't have that massive overhead to deal with, so they can do those quirky and fun and magical, imaginative and different games. And then we get stuff that's different, which is
yeah.
great. Just look at the amount of indie.
Even if it's not under the same company that you know it, but it's still the same franchise.
That's right.
But yeah,
That's right. Look at all the stuff that what was on the PlayStation State of Play and what was at Summer Games Snooze Fest. Um, but those are the two bigger ones that have happened so far. The Xbox one is coming, but Day of the Devs had a heap of games in it that were just unique and interesting. Um, Mix Summer Games Fest, and there's a couple of others smaller indie shows that have got some really interesting little things in there and built by studios of a couple of people, and they're fine. They're brilliant looking games. It's just a shame that they're not going to get the exposure they need. But
Yeah.
there's no shitification in those.
Yeah. I definitely think that where these companies should go is just try to spread out that risk to try to mitigate it instead of just cutting it out completely.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. It's been another fun discussion with you, David. But
Yeah,
But-
no, I've had a good time.
hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and peace.